Aloha, everyone. Let's say aloha together. 1, 2, 3. Aloha. All right, selamat pagi, selamat datang. I am originally from Malaysia, although not a native of KL. I was born in Malacca like Stephanie, but I've been away and lived in Hawaii for 30 years now. So Hawaii is home now. It gives me great pleasure to come back home to visit family, but also as we have all discovered with some of my colleagues and friends at IAFOR, to really just dig into the feast of all the wonderful, delicious food we have here in Malaysia. So we're very pleased today to share a little bit of our insights of our experiences, our projects that dealt with promoting cultural awareness, especially in artificial intelligence, which is a big key area now that we talked a lot about, but also to share a little bit about how we find ourselves being in Hawaii, being in the middle of the East and West collaboration. So I'm really happy to have some of my colleagues over here, and we'll join them over there. Testing, good. Excellent. So is someone going to run the slide? Oh, I'm going to do it. Okay, and this is forward as well. Oh. All right, thank you, Matt. Wonderful. And let's see, it's going to move. All right, excellent. Let's do a quick show of hands. We want to do a temperature check, right? So what we want to find out here is, what is your personal perspective about AI, artificial intelligence here? How many of you are from the category A? It's all just about hype. No? How many of you think that I'm concerned that AI will spell the end of the teaching as we know it? B. Good. I see some of the hands over there. C, the jury's out, but I'm open to maybe exploring. Excellent. I'm in that camp as well. And D, I'm excited. It's the best thing since sliced bread. Very good. We have a number of that too. We have a lot of colleagues who are in that category as well. Okay, so the agenda, we're going to do some quick introductions. We're going to try our best to keep to that 1 hour time limit, including some Q&A as well. We'll talk a little bit about our current projects, and specifically, we want to offer a framework. Those of you who attended Dr. Mike Menchaca's session yesterday on authoring or publishing opportunities is very important, and we are going to offer you a framework for you to think about how you can go about promoting cultural awareness in what you do, and specifically in AI as well. And we'll make some connections here and leaving time for Q&A. Well, as you can see, this slide really saddens me because originally we had a group of 8 panelists, and unfortunately in the last couple of weeks, a few of them actually had some personal family issues and are not able to make it. And so we do have one of our panelists, Mary, who's going to be joining us in the Q&A online via Zoom. But today I have with me Dr. Shamala Janakiraman, and then we have Chipu Dai, as well as Dr. Mike Menchaca. As you can see from this slide, right, we feel ourselves as being a small part of IAFOR. We are very international. I'm originally from Singapore, Malaysia. Shamala originally from India. Chipu is originally from Taiwan. And Mike is originally from the US. But we are very intercultural. We are also very interdisciplinary. And we totally enjoy the environment that we work with together as a department.
Don't hold it again.
Just a quick introduction about University of Hawaii. We are a 10-campus system across all the four major islands in Hawaii. And where we are in Honolulu, the campus is in a neighborhood called Manoa. It's a flagship Research One university. Currently, we've got a student population of about 19,000 students. There we are in the middle of the Pacific between the East and West. And more specifically, we are in Honolulu on the island of Oahu. The Department of Learning, Design, Technology, or we call ourselves LTech, has been in existence for more than 50 years. We are very interdisciplinary. We like to think of ourselves as being pioneering in a lot of the different fields, specifically in media, online, virtual reality, as well as AI. Like we said, during the pandemic, a lot of us the world had to move to remote teaching, but we had been teaching and providing fully online programs since the early 2000s. So for us, it was not something new. It was a matter of continuing as business as usual. One thing that I really enjoyed doing during the pandemic was really helping colleges and universities move from a face-to-face, but because of necessity during the pandemic, to do virtual educational activities like graduations, orientations, and all that, which we have been doing since the early 2000s. In our program, we have degree programs starting from the postgraduate graduate certificates. We have master's degree as well as doctorate, and they're all designed to reach different audiences, right? From more applied at the lower levels to more theoretic for the doctoral level. We like to think of ourselves as being responsive locally as well as internationally because of our faculty. And what we are very happy and very proud about is that we are already collaborative ohana. Ohana is a Hawaiian word to mean family. So that exists not only with the interaction within the classrooms, but also with all of our stakeholders from faculty, students, alumni. We'll be celebrating with our annual LTech Connection, which is a social networking event that we have been doing for a long time. Unfortunately, during the pandemic, we stopped doing face-to-face. We did it virtually, but we're going to have it face-to-face again in March, on March 29th. All right, so at the beginning, what I'm going to do is set up the stage for what we will be talking about. And we have Dr. Mary Hattori, who originally hails from the island of Guam in the Pacific. And Dr. Mary Hattori is currently the director of our Pacific Island Development Program. Unfortunately, due to personal family matters, she's not able to join us. So what we've done is recorded her presentation. It's about 7 minutes. And then she'll join us at the end for the Q&A. All right, and Mary's going to set up to you, give you a little bit more background about how the East-West Center exists, what are the programs, and more specifically, how do the programs address AI in the Pacific Islands. So let's roll the video. Do I press that? Okay.
Aloha. Founded 65 years ago, the East-West Center advances a vision of a peaceful, prosperous, and just Asia-Pacific region through interchange and dialogue across peoples and nations of the United States, Asia, and the Pacific Islands. The Pacific Islands Development Program was created in 1980 by Pacific Island leaders. We serve three primary functions. First, we develop and carry out Pacific-related activities and programs within the East-West Center. Number two, we serve as Secretariat of the Pacific Islands Conference of Leaders, a regional council of 20 member governments. And third, we are a founding member of the Council of Regional Organizations of the Pacific, or CROP, which was established by leaders of the Pacific Islands Forum to improve cooperation, collaboration, and coordination between Pacific regional organizations. We receive our guidance from the 2050 strategy for the Blue Pacific continent. This is a North Star for all of us, and it brings together 7 interconnected thematic areas shown here based on comprehensive consultation with members of the Pacific Islands Forum, the CROP agencies, other regional organizations, non-state actors, and regional experts. With regards to technology, the strategy states the adoption of new and emerging sustainable digital technologies requires effective partnerships and appropriate regional regulatory arrangements that respect the region's shared values. Partnerships are key here. In terms of AI, I want to share some examples of how it's used in the region and some resources. The quote here, "Aloha is the intelligence with which we meet life," opens a position paper on Indigenous protocol and AI. It's a good resource for guidelines for Indigenous-centered AI design, emerging from 20 months of discussions and culminating workshops that were held in Hawaii with cultural leaders across many Indigenous societies. Another good resource is the August 2024 report of the AI Asia Pacific Institute, The State of Artificial Intelligence in the Pacific Islands, which gives a great overview of the current landscape of AI development and infrastructure, review of preparedness, as well as implementation across the Pacific Islands region. In terms of the current state of affairs, the Pacific Islands in general have not yet developed systematic and comprehensive government-led AI strategies and frameworks for governance and ethics. Efforts across the Pacific Islands are primarily directed toward broader digital and ICT initiatives. But the current state of development varies significantly across the region. There are some good examples of AI use in the Pacific, and I'll just share a handful here. There are many more listed in the report of the AI Asia Pacific Institute. One example that they cite is in the area of climate resilience. There are, in fact, many good uses of AI in this whole area of climate science. The UN Capital Development Fund, a company called Tractable, and the Fijian government have partnered to develop a smartphone app that uses AI technology so that after a natural disaster, residents in Fiji can upload photos of damaged property. And the AI technology verifies the damage with partner insurers to enable the quick release of funds so that people can start rebuilding within a matter of days. Another example closer to home is cultural preservation and conservation of bird species, or manu. In Hawaii, 58 of 84 known Hawaiian forest bird species, or manu, have gone extinct. 24 of the remaining 26 are classified as vulnerable to critically endangered. The Pacific Islands Climate Adaptation Science Center has partnered with cultural practitioners and researchers from the University of Hawaii at Hilo. They collect a massive amount of data of bird songs in the forests, and researchers can use that data to track population size and movement of birds through the forest. But the massive amount of soundscape data is very time intensive to analyze manually. So AI technology allows for faster data analysis and more timely insights for conservation management. Cultural preservation is part of this project. The AI decodes the songs of the birds, and the team of cultural practitioners creates their own songs, or oli, to honor the birds. It's a beautiful collaboration with Native practitioners. And the third example I want to share from the farthest reaches of the Pacific, the farthest most point of the Polynesian Triangle, Easter Island, or Rapa Nui. Since 2017, both Spanish and Rapa Nui are official languages on the island, yet Rapa Nui is an endangered language. The Rapa Nui Translator, a project of Uha Te Reo, the Rapa Nui Language Academy, and the Catholic University of Chile's Center for Artificial Intelligence and Applied Anthropology Studies, resulted in a free AI based Rapa Nui Spanish text translator. They worked with Rapa Nui speakers, individuals, educators, elders, and organizations to develop this. It is still being refined and improved, but you can access this online. And again, a very great example. These cases that I shared are great examples of the recommendations that come out of these resources, the report and the white paper. And those recommendations are what I want to end with. First, that AI strategies must be tailored to the specific context of the Pacific Islands. And secondly, that you partner with local communities to co-create AI strategies and policies that are reflective of their unique needs, values, and aspirations, fostering not only a sense of ownership and inclusivity in AI development and deployment, but also making sure that Pacific Island voices are being heard and are part of the conversation and the development. And I'll leave you with that and pass the mic to my colleagues in Malaysia. Mahalo.
Thank you very much, Mary. And Mary will be joining us online for a live Q&A session. So I'm just going to present, first of all, a really quick framework, right? That will help you perhaps put into context the work that we've been doing, specifically with culturally relevant pedagogy. So this is what we might suggest that you may think about as a framework when we talk about our projects, and even for your own individual projects. I'm sure many of this is very relevant. We have the link earlier for the URL for the slides. They are available publicly online. So let's talk about, first of all, how can you promote cultural awareness, right, in anything that you do. So the first three, IAFOR loves the Venn diagram. We love Venn diagrams here as well. So culturally relevant pedagogy really values three outcomes, right? The very first one that you look at in the top on student learning and achievement, which is what we all think about in terms of educational context, right? We want our students to do well academically, and that should be a matter of common sense and a priority in any kind of educational situation you do. But more importantly, the second outcome that we really think is important is for students to not only be able to identify their own ethnic culture, but also to be able to appreciate and accept and learn about at least another person's culture here. And ultimately, the third and final outcome, which is the one that we really strive to get students to is the student's ability to identify, analyze, and then use, right, solve real-world problems, especially those that result in social inequities, right, because of their awareness of the cultural differences between themselves and others within their community. Now, underlying that, we also like to suggest that perhaps we could think about and evaluate about what kind of role does AI play in this kind of work here, right? It's neither good or bad, but on a spectrum of perhaps being underused to overusing AI is where we seem to be a problem here, right? And some examples we'll show in the kind of work we do that will have both extreme ends of the spectrum, but also some that we hope they'll be using AI optimally. So that's the framework we would like to suggest that you think about when we're talking about it. So my first example is a project that I was working with my colleagues who unfortunately are not here, Dr. Dan Hoffman, Singopek. We work on the National Science Foundation Cultural Relevant Computing Project for the last 3 years. It just ended this past year. And this is a challenge that I don't think is only unique to Hawaii, right? It's unique to a lot of places in the world where we lack computer science education opportunities for students, for all students. More so, I think, in certain parts of America and perhaps in the African continent. The Department of Education that we have here in Hawaii actually suffers from a great shortage of qualified computer science teachers, right? So these teachers who may not be trained to be computer science teachers are sometimes being forced because there's a mandate in our state law now that requires by 2025, this year, that all schools from K to 12 grades levels have to have at least one computer science class for their students. So they're all mandated to do so by law. And as such, schools are scrambling to find qualified computer science teachers with very little training or exposure to computer science. So what we've tried to do in our grant project was to propose a solution that looks at professional development for culturally relevant computing, right? The question that Stephanie had earlier with regards to does language impact academic performance, right? We truly believe it does. Not just from the language perspective, but culturally. Now in Hawaii, for example, a lot of students who do not grow, Pacific Islanders and Asian students who do not have role models who are in computer science, don't understand the need for them to learn it for one, but more importantly, why would they even think about a career in computer science because they don't know anyone who does that in their communities. And so our approach with this project was to look at integrating culturally relevant pedagogy. Like I said, the three circles we looked at earlier that values these three outcomes, the actual academic outcome, but also their appreciation of their own culture plus one other student's culture, but ultimately for them to think about how can they use their skills knowledge to now solve real world problems that it results in social inequities. So we proposed culturally relevant computing, and what it is really using culture to drive the development of curriculum to teach computer science. We've done this for the last 3 years, and they are based on some computer science framework with the CSTA, Computer Science Teachers Association standards. But also at the Department of Education, we do have a Na Hopena Ao, which is a native Hawaiian framework that really looks at how do we create relationships that will help students to be successful in what they do academically. And these are some of the different criterion. So an example that we have used in order to teach computer science using a cultural base are modules like, for example, how do we teach them to be digital citizenship, right? Digital citizens, good digital citizens, by incorporating some of the native Hawaiian words, concepts like aloha, malama, which is to protect and to take care, into the curriculum. We use names of students that the local students can relate to, right? And there's some different examples here, which I'm not going to go through too much in details. These are some of the examples here. But what I want to say, at the crux of it, we have met and trained over 200 students across the islands of Hawaii. And one of the themes that really came out really true and, to me, meaningful is when teachers tell us how much they appreciate the way using culture here to teach computer science has made it accessible, not only to themselves, but also to their students, right? Because we're using concepts that they can relate to. For example, for this one on the petroglyphs, we use a fishing metaphor, which is a very much part of the native Hawaiian culture. But also the students grow up on an island where they all go fishing and they know what fishing is all about. So really using things that students can relate to, leveraging cultural relevancies, makes the subject accessible, but also more engaging for the students involved, right? So this is one concrete way that we have tried and look at how do we promote cultural relevance in a subject matter. Now, moving on to the role of AI here. Since we finished a project, we have now moved into how do we make this available to the teachers. We have 5 modules. If you would like to speak to me later on, we are fully online. They're fully developed lesson plans that you can use for your students. But we want to empower teachers now to be able to create their own culturally relevant modules. And we've used a AI tool called Magic School. How many of you have heard of Magic School before? Raise your hand. Yeah? Okay, good. It's freely available online. You can sign up for a free account. It's got a lot of professional tools for teachers. And there's one tool that I love and I've seen demonstrated. You can just plug in an email complaint from a parent and it'll generate a response for you that is very diplomatic in order how to handle it. But there are many different tools as well. So what we've done is now teach teachers to now look at using a tool like Magic School AI, right? How can we extend the same concept now to create new localized characters, write new dilemmas about social, digital citizenships, modify for different grade levels. And there's one special tool in Magic School that really helps you to connect to other standards other than just science, math, or computer science standards, right? Because a lot of what we teach has a very strong base in social studies. And so you can connect to social studies, geography, historical kind of standards as well. So they have a module called Standards Unpacker. So I'm going to show you an example. This is a prompt that I put into their chatbot, Reina. I'm saying, I'm a 5th grade teacher. I'm teaching computer science lessons about impacts of computing on society. In this lesson, I want to give my students a brief scenario involving social media. This scenario should involve 5th grade child and the dilemma should represent a tension between what the child in the scenario wants to do and social media, and what the child in the scenario should do and the child in the scenario wants to do here. All right, so it's a very generic but really thorough prompt. It might be difficult to read, but the first iteration of the results shows a pretty well-developed scenario, right? However, I wasn't happy with it because I felt that it didn't have a real strong cultural inference. So I asked Reina to now refine it. Can you suggest a culturally relevant theme that is appropriate for students in Hawaii for this scenario? And it came back with a much better one. In this case, it's called a hula challenge, right? So now we're talking about Hawaii. Hula is pretty well known, and the whole scenario now deals with hula and should they post photos and videos to social media? What are the pros and cons? What are the dangers to the students themselves? So as you can see, we have used, in this case, if you look at the whole experience, we look at the first part, it promotes cultural awareness, right? Identifying all the different circles in the Venn diagram. But in terms of the use of AI, what do you think? Where does it fall on this spectrum? Underuse, optimally used, overuse? Anyone? optimal. We like to think it's optimal, all right? Really, it depends on how the teachers use them here, right? So as you see through the examples of the different projects we have all spectrum of all across the spectrum for this. And I'd like to now pass on to Shamala because I know that we have a lot to share with you, but we'll talk more about it at the end of the session for Q&A. Sorry, to Chipu now. Thank you, Chipu.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Leon. And the project I'm going to introduce is also building on that framework. And we're studying how AI and CS are connected in Hawaii. And when we're preparing locally committed and globally prepared teachers or students, we need to consider how do we integrate artificial intelligence in computer science education, building on the cultural relevance computing project in the era of AI. We're going to prepare teachers to be able to be AI literate and students as well, and in computer science. Okay, great. So for the first two projects, I'm going to tackle this from two angles. The first angle is how do we teach artificial intelligence to computer science students or teachers, and how do they learn with artificial intelligence technology in computer science education. And after that, I'm going to provide an example of undergraduate course that we designed, and how do we consider artificial intelligence literacy in the redesigning of that course for undergraduate students. All right, so for the first project is how do we teach AI literacy in computer science education? And first of all, we need to understand the current landscape in terms of what other people are doing and how do we approach it with culturally relevant practices. So in the literature, there are several technologies or techniques or approaches being used to study how do we teach AI literacy in computer science education, including project-based learning, experiential learning, game-based learning, and some ethics and policy discussions. And a lot of this, courses or approaches focusing on coding AI models rather than providing the critical thinking or critical evaluation of the AI output, and which is also aligned with our interactions and collaboration with other interdisciplinary folks. So as Dr. Liang mentioned, that we're very interdisciplinary field and department and study. So there are a lot of different ideas and perspectives from other disciplines, and they're mostly focusing on the coding practice. So how do we integrate pedagogical or education perspectives into that practice? It's another direction that we can go. And also, there are also thinking needed to be considered. How do we integrate artificial intelligence literacy into CS education and K-12 education? And how do we advance with the AI-powered learning tools for using those AI-powered learning tools to support AI literacy in computer science education? There's also a growing industry demand for AI skills. And it also has to collaborate with other fields in incorporating different pedagogical considerations, and how do we push those AI coding models in terms of learning AI in this field. And it can be integrated into a more core part for broader educational systems. And another perspective is there's still a lack of standard AI literacy curriculum, and also assessment is a big part of teaching and learning in this area, and PISA is going to design, develop, and implement assessment of AI literacy in 2029. So there's some work being done in this area, but what do we mean when we call someone else as AI literate? And that is an aspect that is needed to be considered. And we can also use AI-powered adaptive learning systems to personalize the AI education in computer science education, and offer more learning and professional development programs for people to learn and cultivate their AI knowledge. And the second project is how do we use AI technologies? So one finding from the previous studies that we can use AI-powered learning tools to support the learning of AI literacy, but how do we use those AI-powered learning tools for students to learn computer science education? So that is another project, and that is situated in the challenges in computer science education. So there are a lot of low participation rate phenomenon being observed in the CS classroom, and typically their class sizes are very large with limited instructor. How do we design or use technologies to provide more scalable and more reasonable solutions for students to learn anytime when they want? And how do they personalize that experience with limited instructors? That is another challenge that we're trying to solve here. And there are traditional solutions for that. And last week, we attended Computer Science Summit in Hawaii. And what teachers are practicing is so aligned with what we found here in the literature. They engage in pedagogical co-review with other students or teachers, and they do pair programming and they do peer instruction. But there are also challenges with that or limitations with these traditional solutions. Although we found them also used in the literature, and the challenge would be, what if there is no peer when students want to learn in the informal learning settings, or peers are not available, and maybe they want more diverse perspectives from other peers, and how do we address those limitations is another question, and peers may not always be available, and instructors, they need to pay attention to many different student needs. So a promising solution would be using innovative learning technology with generative AI for personalized learning experiences. So from the study, we found three major things. The first is using AI technologies to advance in virtual agents for coding practices. And we would like to design diverse and flexible and complex approaches for AI-powered virtual agents. And these AI-powered virtual agents need to be designed in consideration with pedagogical and cognition and learning experiences for the students. And another issue in that is, how do we reconsider or reimagine the role of instructors and teaching assistants in learning with this AI-powered virtual agents? Traditionally, there are a lot of individual cognitive processing occurred with these intelligent tutoring systems, but we need to start to rethink about what are the roles of instructors and TAs when all these AI-powered virtual agents are available for learning with them, and how do we approach human AI collaborative learning experience and landscape in this area. So with that two studies, we also want to introduce the redesigned course in our campus, at Hawai'i-Mānoa. The course was focusing on preparing students to use technology for academic success. And this is an asynchronous course, and they're preparing technological skills for undergraduate students, and they meet the diverse student audience through competency-based approach. In other words, there's no systematic, or there's no predefined deadlines for all the assignments. So in other words, students can choose. There are core or elective assignments. Students can choose which they want to do. They have to do the core, but they can decide what kind of competence they want to be prepared, and they can choose what they want to do. And their progress is linked to their skills mastery. So that's the background of the course. And it's offered since 2015, and it's taken by approximately 400 students every year, which is, we're very proud of that and happy with that. And the technologies tool used for this course, including collaborative technology for research, for writing, for multimedia development, for oral presentation, design, and delivery. And the technology used in these courses are evolved over time. So with new technologies, we redesign and rethink about how students can use this technology for learning. And as mentioned previously, the needs for redesign this course is that instructors started to observe that students were using AI to complete their work, and without acknowledging the use of AI. And we think students need to be prepared and need some guidance and the practice of using those AI technologies appropriately and ethically. We do not want to ban students using AI technologies because they're gonna live with AI in the future. So they need to know how to use that appropriately and ethically. So the course redesigned to address AI, including providing them with foundational knowledge and practice using the tools appropriately. And it will be piloted in summer, this upcoming summer, and we're engaging in the redesign process. And we're not designing that in vacuum. We want to consider the theory background and the framework, as mentioned yesterday. We want to design that with some theoretical guidance. So we want to foster analytical reasoning and cognitive engagement in AI and facilitate ethical dilemma dialogues in AI design and deployment, and also design the AI solution for social good and accessibility. We're preparing today's students for tomorrow, so they're gonna be the citizen of our society. So we want them to consider that aspect as well. Okay, right. And these are some examples that we redesigned the course, including how to cultivate with AI literacy, aligning with the theoretical considerations mentioned previously. So we want them to use AI and ask some question. For example, we want them to use AI to ask what is the mascot of UH-Manoa, and students has to engage with critically evaluating the output from the AI technologies. And this is broad, and the AI technologies advance so quickly. When I design those assignments, the response is so different from what I tried this morning, and they are advancing like every day. Now I'm just, my brain just go crazy when I see those advancements. But this is very broad, and it can advance with the recent advance of AI technologies, but they still have to engage in critical AI literacy exercise in that assignment. And they can use AI for AI-assisted writing system, which also introduce new interesting questions. What are the process when they engage in AI-assisted writing process? And do they depend on the machine, or do they not thinking at all during the process? So we want them to document their processes, and eventually they can be independent users of AI technology with that. And also discuss societal issues in the era of AI with the AI literacy that they learned in this course. So with that, I'm going to pass to Dr. Jana Kiraman for more discussion on the framework of the spectrum on the AI.
Aloha, everyone. Can you hear me? Yeah. I'm Shamila. I'm an assistant professor at the University of Hawaii. So I'm just going to continue what Dr. Chipu has been talking now. It's about assessments. So my talk is going to be about the challenges of designing assessments. And previously, Dr. Peter Leong and Dr. Chipu were talking about how AI could be integrated in student work. But I'm going to talk about ways in which we can minimize student use of AI. So that's a big problem that educators are facing now. So they are feeling like, our students are going to use AI anyway. So what kind of assignments can we give where we can minimize the use of AI? So that is what I want to focus on now. And tying back to the framework which we started with, it has these three components: cultural competence, critical consciousness, and student learning and achievement. So looking at the definitions of critical consciousness, it is about students' ability to identify, analyze, and solve real-world problems, especially those that result in social inequalities. So what happened in the beginning when AI was trained, and several findings showed, is that it was trained on biased content, which was actually perpetuating stereotypes and social inequalities. So the way images were created, the way passages were generated, there was bias in everything. So when students are going to use AI-generated language, then their findings are also going to be biased, will be perpetuating stereotypes and social inequalities, right? So, and another thing that we have to focus on is the environmental sustainability. I'm very passionate about this subject, and I feel that we have to teach about this to our children, even when they are in school, like in grade 1, grade 2, like that. And why it is very important now is AI seems to be consuming a lot of electricity. So as an electronics engineer, I know what is happening actually inside. Compared to a Google search, a word Google search, the amount of electricity that is consumed by AI is 10 times more. I'm talking about one word. But in AI, students are doing entire homework, entire assignments. So this, imagine the amount of electricity that's going to consume. And where is this happening? It is happening in those large computers, which are called servers, which are situated in data centers across the globe. So these are huge computers, and they're going to consume a lot of energy every day, every minute, every second. And to cool that, they are using water from the rivers at a time when water is not available even for drinking. And people are planning on constructing even bigger data centers. That means more data energy consumption and more water required for cooling. And when this water returns back to the rivers, the temperature is high and it makes the water unsustainable for fishes and other living organisms. So we are actually sort of creating an environmental disaster when we are using a lot of AI, right? So that is why I'm focusing on how we can, like Dr. Chipu said, we cannot stop them from using AI, then we are doing an injustice, because later when they get to the workplace, they are going to be using AI in some form or the other. So let them use it, but at least let's try to minimize their use of AI. So that is why I'm talking about all these things. Next is cultural competence. It is about students' ability to understand, respect, and effectively interact with people from diverse cultures. Dr. Peter Leong touched upon it. What is happening is when students are using AI, they are isolated, so they're not interacting with their peers, so they are using AI to complete their homework. So research has found that collaborative learning or team learning works better, helps students learn better and remember and retain information for a long time. So that's not going to happen if students are going to be working with AI all by themselves. So there is going to be isolation. And again, research has found that working with peers actually motivates and engages learners. Again, that is also going to be affected if students are going to completely rely on AI, right? And the last component of the framework was student learning and achievement, and is about students' intellectual growth and moral development, and also their ability to problem solve and reason. Right here, initially, AI was trained on copyrighted material. That is, people who don't want to share their work just for free, right? And the images, videos, content, everything was taken from copyrighted material. So using that is not fair use and is not an ethical use of AI. And many students, actually middle school students, are using AI to finish their homework. They don't know what is copyright material and what is fair use and things. So we have to tell them what it is. And you must have heard about hallucination. So AI has been known to generate, false information with very nice in-text citations and full references. But there's no paper like that, no study conducted like that. So there's a lot of misinformation out there. And if you do Google search, you'll find lots of information, right? Some are credible, some are not. And AI is not going to look for credible information. So when students use AI, their work will also not be 100% credible from credible sources. So either they have to check, or we have to check as educators whether the source was good. So there's another extra added work for all of us, right? So what I want to say is, when we are starting any course, maybe on the first day of course, that's why I do it. That's how I do it. So I tell my students about AI, all these three things, why it should be used or why it should not be used, and then I tell them it's your decision. And you are in this place, enrolled in my course because you want to learn something. So if you're going to use AI to complete your homework, then you're not going to be learning that thing. So then I tell them, you decide how much hour you want to use AI for, or which part of your homework you want to use for. And many people call this cheating or plagiarism. I call this laziness. So I remember maybe 10, 20 years ago, I used to remember 50, 60 phone numbers, and I could calculate, multiply, divide everything mentally. Now I need my cell phone for everything, to calculate even simple multiplication or whatever, and remembering people's phone numbers. So if we are going to allow our students to rely on AI to do everything, then they are going to lose their capacity to think. So critically think, creatively think, work collaboratively, and communicate with people, all that is going to get affected. So my suggestion is, okay. So my suggestion is to design projects or activities or assignments to assess our students in a way that the use of AI is minimized. One way I'm doing this is through service learning projects. So I teach instructional design to my master's students, and I take them to real places in Hawaii where there is a need for designing instruction. So my students go there, talk to the education manager, the subject matter experts, find out what are the learning needs of people who visit those places. Those are usually school children who come for field trips. So they find out, my students will go find out what is their need, and then based on that, they will create interactive digital storybooks. So we are working on 2 projects, one in Lion Arboretum, and another, which is a botanical garden, and another place is Manoa Heritage Center. So the speciality of these 2 places is they want to preserve the native Hawaiian culture, tradition, and preserve even plants, insects, and birds. So these are huge places, and they want the children who are studying in Hawaii to learn about these things. So my students go there, do the analysis, learner analysis, take 360-degree photos, 2D photos, collect the content from subject matter experts, and then create the interactive storybooks. So if you just heard this description, there is not enough place for using AI, because my students are there in the site, talking to people, collecting information, and doing things. Maybe they can use AI to generate, okay, what are the Hawaiian birds and things like that. But the major part of their work is done all by themselves. So this is one of my suggestions. And in the process, they're creating what are called open education resources. And I shared about this even last year. Yeah. So these resources are available for free, not only for children in Hawaii, but anybody who can access these digital storybooks through a website, through a web link. So these are available for everybody. And by doing such projects, students learn about the importance of conservation, environmental sustainability, and about the local culture, cultural competence, critical consciousness, and learning and their own achievement. So this is my suggestion. Maybe in your fields, you could implement similar projects or think about other creative ways of projects and assignments where we can minimize the use of AI. Thank you very much.
I'm going to do this very quickly so that we can have questions. I'm actually currently on sabbatical. I'm the former chair and Peter is the current chair. So I have the opportunity of traveling, and I'm in Japan currently, and I'll be there for 3 months. I've been there for a couple of months. And what I want to talk about today is just kind of what I've learned from my time in Japan about their utilization and inclusion of AI, because what's important, as you could tell from the frameworks that we were talking about, is to understand the cultural importance and relevance. It seems to be turning, so that's okay. And to understand that, it's important to realize that what's most crucial about any kind of technology that you're thinking about, studying, understanding, is to know that all cultures, entities, people, even to the granular level, universities and students, they approach understanding of technology and utilization of technology uniquely, right? And so even on the panel, we have various perspectives about the utilization of AI. Shamila talking about minimizing AI and concerns about its utilization and ethics. And I'm more of my students can use it freely as long as I understand what they did and how they did and why they did what they did. And so it's important to avoid comparisons of different entities in terms of that is the most appropriate use of that tool, whether it's technology, whether it's AI, whether it's online learning, whether it's other technologies that are being used, the cell phone, social media. It's more important to understand how the culture embraces and adopts these types of technologies. And to do that, you really have to understand different viewpoints. You have to visit, you have to talk, you have to look at what people do, you have to listen to what their concerns are, the different kind of adaptations. And so that's one of the things that I've been trying to do. And it's interesting when I have conversations with colleagues in Japan, it's consistently, oh, we're behind, we don't do this. Well, it's not that's not the appropriate way to look at it. It's more of, okay, what are we doing? Why are we doing what we're doing? And how can we either embrace or not embrace those different types of technologies that are available. Usage among students is growing in Japan, and integration by faculty might be limited. But the Japanese Ministry of Education has issued guidelines encouraging cautious adoption. So this is one of the reasons why it might be viewed as, okay, we're going to use this, but we have to do this cautiously, slowly, understand the ethics, and learn what it is that we're doing. But rather than use that as an impediment, think of it as an opportunity. So what is the opportunity to really study, test, understand these types of technologies before we start thinking about adopting them in the classroom? And so, when Shamila was talking about, okay, so the students are using it, faculty maybe aren't using it. So one of the ways that we came up with doing it on a small scale is one of the upcoming IAFOR conferences. We're going to do a workshop, and then the workshop is going to be on how to maximize your experience in conferences, and this will be in Japan, in Tokyo. And so we'll do that in two parts. We'll talk about typical traditional techniques for conferencing, networking, understanding what you can do. And then we'll bring in, okay, so how can you utilize some AI tools to help maximize your conference experience? Some of the things that we'll talk about is Otter AI. It records conversations. It can record presentations. It can summarize them for you, construct them for you. One of the things that Shamila was talking about was, well, you really can't do AI in this milieu. And then I was thinking, well, you could use Otter AI in your conversations and then go back and have it help you remember almost like a transcript from a legal courtroom that you were in, and the stenographer is making the conversation. So these things can be recorded and then utilized in interesting ways. And then you can actually analyze. The Otter AI can then transport to data analytics. You can do qualitative studies. You can do all kinds of fascinating things with in terms of that. You can do narrative analysis through ChatGPT, and then things like Google Gemini. You can do calendaring. So there's really some very powerful things that you can do with some simple, free, available AI tools that are out there. So that's the opportunity to introduce the kinds of things that it can do in kind of a non-threatening way to really understand what it can do. And then some considerations. I won't go into this in detail because we do want to leave time for questions. But from the AI standpoint, I was having several conversations with colleagues at the pre-conference yesterday and earlier. And just from a logical standpoint of thinking about how the world works, most people understand prompt engineering. It's what Peter was talking about with refining. It's just refinement. It's understanding how to ask AI the right questions in the right way. And actually, you have to train the AI, and it learns even when you interact with ChatGPT, it learns you specifically the more you interact with it, and it knows and predicts what it is that you're. So remember, all AI it's just predicting what it thinks you want to know. That's why sometimes it doesn't tell the truth, because it thinks, oh, well, this person wants this outcome. And so we call those hallucinations. Right? It's not necessarily lying. It's just finding the facts that it might have in its repertoire, and not all of those are truthful information, and providing the outcome that it predicts you need, right? So sometimes knowing the outcome produces things that aren't necessarily what you would expect. That's why it's important to understand and to really look at those and to have a kind of comfort level with that. So with that, the important part is just building capacity, right? And so building capacity, cultural awareness, technology tool and awareness, what the students are doing, what the faculty is having conversations, and starting small.
Thank you, Mike. Well, we've done a lot of talking. Let's sit down and listen to your questions. I hope we've given you a lot to think about. And we have also Dr. Mary Hattori online who can answer questions about her section live as well.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Pete. You've got about 6 or 7 minutes for questions. Mm-hmm. So any questions to address any of the panelists at the back there? Then I'll come to you.
Yeah, can you bring her up?
Thank you. Dr. Johnny Karaman and Dr. Dayu mentioned some of the pitfalls of AI. So, and Dr. Johnny Karaman, you said that service learning was one way to get the students out and not using the AI. So I teach in Taiwan, I teach university and high school students. So one way that I do get them to build skills and not rely, because I notice when I teach the college students writing, they're just, if it's a take-home assignment, they'll just use AI. They'll just, it's like cheating or something. But for those students, I found that if we do a lot of task-based activities in the class, they can work together, they're having fun, and they're building the skills. And I wonder if you, this is a question for all of you, if you found that that's also a way, besides the service learning, to build skills.
Yeah. Service learning. Service learning is just one example that I was giving, and especially for the subject that I'm teaching, instructional design. And I think your example works well. So they are working collaboratively in the class. So there is no isolation, social isolation. And then do you have a second component to the homework where they go home and do something, or they finish all the work in the classroom? In the classroom, yeah, right in front of you. Actually, I was thinking when I was making this presentation, maybe in the good old days where we used to write exams for everything, right? 3-hour exams, sitting in front of the teacher. Maybe if this concern is going to increase more, like students are going to plagiarize and cheat or laziness or whatever, maybe we'll go back to those 3-hour long exams. So I think your method or your activity is a good idea to use in classroom. Thanks.
Before we move to the next question, since we have Mary on the screen now, Mary, would you like to add on to anything that you mentioned in your video? Can you hear me, Mary?
Yes. No, I just thought I want to say thank you, and I really appreciate the examples that each of my colleagues spoke about. I think, cultural relevance and integrating our cultural concerns, values, are ways of learning into our work with AI and technology in general is so important. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. All right, next question.
I'm Spencer Benz. I'm retired faculty from Maryland and Macau. I want to start with a comment, and then I do actually have a question. I think one of my comments is that educators, sometimes it appears we're being a bit sloppy with language, and language matters. I hear people talk about AI, but sometimes they mean generative AI, and sometimes they mean coding AI, and sometimes they mean machine learning. It's okay if we understand all of those and put it in context, but for beginning learners, particularly for teachers, this can be very confusing. So here's my question. What does it mean to be AI literate? A number of you use that. And is this different from being AI competent or AI fluent? Or do they all mean the same thing and we just use them interchangeably?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So one of the things that we talk about is literacy and technology literacy, digital literacy. And if you look at the nomenclature, if you look at the research, there's disagreement even about what the norms are. And there's whole research papers written on nomenclature. So I think from an AI literacy standpoint, what since we're not a computer science department, we're actually in education, it's just more important for students to understand the different gradations, what they are, how to think about it, what use is from a consumer standpoint, from a producer standpoint, from a design standpoint, from a science standpoint. And we're not as concerned about machine learning and large language learning, but we want to teach the students the basics. So it's a really good question. It's important to understand the background and what's going behind the scenes. But it's going to be like the internet. 20 years ago, people were understanding how the internet works, how routers work, how packets work. Nobody knows that anymore. Nobody cares about that. And I think AI is going to become ubiquitous in that way, where it's just going to be narrative.
There's a question just here.
Hello. I congratulate you all on this good framework that you have developed. And I want to know, maybe my understanding of ethics and values may be the different, because it is a subjective topic. So if we are talking about the ethics of AI, so what could be the guidelines or what could be the criteria on deciding that ethics for AI? This is my question, actually.
Thank you for the question. I think that's an excellent question, and ethics is also very broad, and value is also very broad, and it can be asked about designing the AI technologies. Are they going to replace a lot of workers, or ethics about students using AI technologies? Do they just use it for laziness, or do they use it to augment their practices? So it's just very broad, and I think we need to define what is your focus of ethics before we can discuss that. But I think in general, just like the AI literacy, there's no agreement on that, and we're still in an evolving stage. So yeah, and also if you look at the court judgment about whether it's ethical or not, actually it's still debatable. So I think it's fast evolving field, and we need to continue to learn like every day. Like this morning is just so different than what I learned from 3 months ago, right? So thank you. I hope that answers or not answer, but just my comment.
That's a really big question that all of us are struggling with, right? Grappling with. I can just say from my example from my class, right? I have a general statement in my course syllabus that tells my students, you can use it. I encourage you to use it, but use it ethically and responsibly. And the way I describe in my syllabus is you can use it to brainstorm ideas and all, but you cannot use it to do the work for you. You can use it to refine the work, your original ideas. You can use it to help finesse, finalize, proofread your work. The requirement I have, if they were to use AI in their assignments, they have to submit a copy of their conversation transcript with the chatbot, so I know where they start with and how did it impact their actual final product.